Anthony, why are you running for governor?
The question of the hour, right? We're in my office today. This is my business. I started it 20 years ago. It looked a lot different back then. I started in a 200 square foot office, probably half the size of this podcast room that we're in. And
we're at the Spectrum.
We're at the Spectrum, yeah.
I mean, I rolled in. What a place to be.
Yeah, but that's not where I started. In that tiny little office, 200 square foot in Downey, I just had drive and vision and started this company. And over the last 20 years, built it to what you're seeing now, which is what Inc. magazine considered one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America.
Wow.
2019 and 2020. And the reason I say that, and I'm proud of it, more so the 2020 designation, is because we were in the middle of a pandemic. This entire country was shutting down. The world was shutting down.
Absolutely.
Our industry imploded. 80% of our industry, went through 3 rounds of layoffs, closed their doors. A lot of them consolidated. We not only increased our physical footprint by 3 times, but doubled our staff and didn't lay anyone off. And again, I say that because I think it's critical that we know that as California voters, we're not just voting for a governor, but we need a CEO. And so the last 20 years, 2 decades, kind of built that experience. I work with Fortune 500 companies. I work with startups. And the reason why I'm running is because I was leaving. We were on our way out, right? So California is not business friendly at all. Look at the amount of taxes we pay. Look at how difficult it is to start a business, keep a business, sustain a business. So we were on our way out. That was enough of a reason for me. But when you started to add on top of that, our churches were shut down. We couldn't worship. Other businesses were shut down. We couldn't shop. Some were deemed essential, some not. We had our schools, shut down. It just became an inhospitable place to live. And so we were attracted to other states that had, governors with a little bit more courage and a little bit more fortitude. And so we were going to leave. But, in praying about it and in thinking about what we would be leaving behind, our family, our ecosystem, my business, I would have broken my lease. I would have taken employees with me. I started to realize that I wasn't really living out what I've been teaching my kids, which is you don't run from things. If you can't find a solution, you become the solution. And that started to weigh heavily on me. And so we put it to a lot of prayer. So what we did was we went through about 4 weeks of intense prayer. My wife and I wanted to hear from God. I wanted to know what he wanted to do because mentally, physically, emotionally, I was gone. I was working with realtors in Florida. I was gone.
Sure.
And one morning I woke up and I've spoken to people who have been alcoholics or drug addicts. And some of them have talked about this experience where they woke up one day and the desire for those things had left them, right? And I woke up one morning and the desire to leave California just left. And I struggled that whole morning trying to, what was wrong? Where's that excitement? What's wrong? And we started praying about it, my wife and I, for that week. And we went to church and our pastor started to give a sermon on the very specific topics we were talking about. California being in bondage, California needing to be liberated. He started to use words that we were using in intimate conversations. And my wife says immediately, "That's God." I said, "Probably, but I need to hear more." Well, for the next 3 weeks that happened, we would have intimate conversations. We'd go to church. He would confirm it in a message in the scripture. And finally, on the very last week, I was getting ready for church and I said, "Okay, God, I get it. I get why you would want this to happen. I get the why. But how? How in the world would this come to pass?" So I get ready for church. I go to church. As soon as we walk in, pastor says, "So here's what we're going to talk about today. You don't need to know you don't need to know the how. You need to know the who. He'll make a way in the wilderness, rivers in the desert." And for me, that was the final confirmation I needed to know that God wanted us to stay and he wanted us to fight. So that's in a nutshell why I'm running.
Amen. I love it. Yeah. So what an incredible story you have. You started a business, in essence, a couple 100 square feet. God's blessed it. You've worked hard and grown it. Why do you think this makes you qualified for governor?
Well, a lot of things beyond that make me qualify for governor. So on that particular topic, like I said, California needs a CEO as much, if not more, than a governor. 5th largest economy on the planet. We need to renegotiate our contracts. We need to look at our P&Ls. We need to stop excessive spending. We need to start to monetize California. That you need to be equipped for that. You can't just be a politician and think that those skill sets just come with a job. They don't. You can't be a celebrity and you know, all of a sudden know what it's like to be a CEO, hire, fire, negotiate contracts, all that stuff. So the CEO aspect of my life qualifies me greatly for this role, but that's not all. So one of the greatest fights right now that we have in California are our freedoms. Our liberties are being taken from us. Well, my grandfather fled communist Cuba in the 50s. He came to the United States to pursue the American dream. So growing up, I knew about communism and socialism, but I didn't really understand the impact it had. So I went to Cuba a few years back with my wife. We've been 7 times since. And I saw firsthand. I saw what it's like to live in a country where you have no rights, no freedoms, no liberties, and the government controls everything.
Tragic.
So I have a unique perspective that I bring to the table that not many people have, which is I've seen socialism and communism, stared it in the face, and I know the outcome, right? So I can see the writing on the wall. I can see what's happening here, and I can identify it and help to prevent against it. Another attack that we're facing as Californians is on our family, right? So you think about our most vulnerable, those are our children, the way that they're being attacked in schools, right?
Yes.
Critical race theory, sexuality, just mask mandates, vaccine mandates. Our families are under attack in California. So what do we need as a leader what do we need the leader of California to have? Not only be a CEO, not only understand freedom and liberties, but also have a family perspective. How can you, I do believe you can fight for families and children not ever having a family or a child. But when you do have a family and you do have a child, it's
different.
Becomes personal.
Yes,
it's
it does.
Personal.
It is.
You have a parental perspective. And so I bring to the table also not just CEO, not just understanding communism, socialism, and the importance of freedom, but also a biblical, we'll get to that, but a family and parental perspective that some of the other candidates don't. And the last thing that qualifies me is the biblical thing, which is we've lost our way. This is just as much a spiritual battle as it is a political battle in California. And we've lost our way. And so we need somebody that has strong, conservative, biblical values and principles.
Amen.
And I say this, California is a melting pot. It's diverse, religious, ethnic, you name it. I always say you don't need to be a Christian to back my campaign, but you're going to want me to be, because you're going to want someone in office that is not going to bow to special interest, to the power, to the lure of it, the lust of it, the unions, all that comes with it, right?
Yeah.
You need somebody that stands on hardcore conservative biblical principles, because you're going to want that person to pull from that perspective when making those decisions and fighting those fights. So collectively, all of those things that I mentioned make me uniquely qualified for this job. We don't need another politician to try and fix the problems that other politicians have made.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the biblical thing. You were on stage, I think it was my friend, Pastor Rob McCoy,
yes.
at Calvary Chapel Godspeak out in Thousand Oaks area. Actually, I think they're in Newberry Park.
Yeah.
And I love the analogy you used about kind of a
5
David and
stones?
Goliath. Yeah. Tell me about those 5 stones.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest battles we have right now, as we near the end of this campaign season and we're rapidly approaching the recall, is the idea that we're in a general election and you need a big name, you need celebrity status, you need, the popularity to win. And the truth of the matter is that in a general election, possibly, but in a special election, a recall election, we can unseat Gavin Newsom without there being anybody on the ballot.
Yep.
Because of question number 1. Do you want to recall Gavin Newsom, yes or no? And if enough of us get out and vote yes, Gavin Newsom is unsat. He's gone. There's an empty seat in Sacramento. So then we can actually, for the first time, vote for something other than popularity and policy. We can actually vote for values and principles, right?
I love it.
And so the analogy I gave that day in church is, don't always look for the popular, more obvious person to be the solution to the problem. God did not choose the mightiest warrior. He didn't choose the most popular king. He didn't choose anybody, actually, that anybody knew. The only people that knew David when he walked into the battlefield were his brothers, right?
Yep.
So here's this shepherd out there in the field killing lions and bears, right? Doing God's work. Shows up to the battle and gets called into this fight. Actually takes it on willingly. And, they start to give him the equipment that they think he needs to fight the battle. They give him a sword, they give him a shield, they give him a helmet.
All of man's ideas.
All of man's ideas. They're like, oh, you're going to do this?
Yeah.
This is how you're going to win this fight. And David says, absolutely not. He actually says it says in the Bible, he actually shook it off. He said it was too heavy. He shook it off. And he says, that's not how I fight. That's not how I fight. So God chose the most unlikely candidate to slay the giant. And he chose David for the unique way that David was going to fight that battle. And when you think about what I'm doing, and by the way, the 5 stones comes in because when David walked out onto the field, all he had was his faith, a slingshot, and 5 stones, right? And so that day in church, I brought up my family, and I said they were my 5 stones, and I made that analogy. But really, that's what I'm doing. You know, I am not the most popular candidate by mainstream media coverage, by polling, but God doesn't use the most obvious. And so we go into battle. I go with my family. Those are my stones, right? I go with my faith, and honestly, I fight the fight the way I fight my battles, through faith, not traditional means, you don't build a company like this over 20 years and survive recessions and pandemics if you just follow traditional math. You got to be untraditional, right? So I have an untraditional approach, I have untraditional tools, and I have a very non-traditional God in this battle.
I love it. Kind of sounds like you have a little bit of a non-traditional faith. Tell me a little bit about your faith.
Yeah, my faith is, I've always had my faith. My dad's family was Catholic, my mom's family was Christian, so I always grew up in the church. But God was always a part of my life. He was not the center of my life. I met my wife. Again, God was a part of our life, but not the center. We had our first child. 2 months into parenthood, we were down in San Diego, and we had an encounter with God that forever changed our life. And so basically, the short condensed version of the story is I was driving, my wife was in the back with our son, and he stopped breathing. And she couldn't revive him or get him to respond, so she screamed. I pulled the car over. She jumps out of the car. I go into the back seat, and I try to revive him, and he's non-responsive. So I pull him out of his car seat, no heartbeat, not breathing. Now, I'm not sure what to do. I don't know CPR, and I come to find out now an adult should never give CPR to an infant because of the size of our lungs, right, our capacity. But I didn't know that at the time, so in a panic, I started to give him CPR. Now, I was giving him all the air that was in my lungs, right? The nurse later on said I should have blown out his lungs, right? But I'm giving him CPR, and he's not responding. Now, minutes are going by, and I have this infant child, 2 months old, not breathing, no heartbeat, can't resuscitate him, and I practically blew out his lungs. There was a point in the car where I just knew. I knew at that moment I had reached the limit of what I could do on my own. And I felt fearful of my son's soul at that point. I just wanted to know that he was going to be okay. So in that car, I lifted him up. He was lifeless. I lifted him up in the car. I closed my eyes and I just said, Father God, he is no longer mine. I freely and openly give my son to you. He belongs to you. And as soon as I did that, he responded. He started to breathe. My wife jumps in the car. We end up at Mercy Hospital, spend 2 days there. They couldn't find anything wrong with him. They had him all tests known to man. They couldn't replicate it. Didn't know what was wrong with him. But what happened is during those 2 days that we were away from our family, isolated in that emergency room with our son, we had no other option but to completely and utterly just depend on God to sustain us, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So when we came back from that 2 or 3 day encounter, he moved from the fringe of our life to the center of our life, and and we feel like that was his way of saying, I no longer want to be a part of it. I want to be the focus of it. And that was 24 years ago. My son works here now with me, healthy, strong, strapping, handsome young man, and he and that was the life-changing event that basically course-corrected us. And from that point on, this company was built on that principle. Our home that we built from the ground up from dirt has a Bible laid in the foundation. It's a metaphor, but it's also quite literally how we live our life.
I got to give you a hug, brother. Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
Just what a story. Oh, Oh my word.
Hey, I'll be honest with you. If I wasn't there myself, I wouldn't have believed it. I tell that all the time. I think it was it Johnny Cash that said, "I know Jesus is real because I was there when he saved me." So that story, you hear a lot of stories. People tell a lot of stories. A lot of stories.
How old's your son right now?
24 right now.
So that was like 24 years ago.
24 years ago, and it's like it just happened yesterday. And like I said, if I hadn't been there myself and had gone through those 5 minutes, I'm talking 5 minutes of just doing everything I could as a human and coming up helpless, I wouldn't have believed it. But it happened, and he's here with us today, and it's just a great way. That was a beautiful way of God saying, "I'm knocking."
Yeah.
You need to open the door, right? And we did, and that's kind of been the foundation of our faith.
Wow, what an incredible story! What an incredible moment to God, not only get a hold of your heart and your wife's heart, but then just to give it over to Him.
Yeah,
completely.
We then had 3 other children, so we have 4 children, and then we have an adopted son, and we were foster care parents for a season. So. Big family, and again, that's why I take a lot of what we're talking about personal. It's very personal to me, and I think we need somebody in office that will take these topics personally.
Powerful. What a powerful testimony.
Thank you.
So you've got your family, your campaign's going strong. What would you want to share with the pastor? What would you want to tell? Church United, I founded this ministry. We have over 2,000 California pastors. We're growing nationally. But what would you want to tell pastors? Why should a pastor get behind you and endorse you?
Because I would tell a pastor that this is not the time to compromise. Oftentimes as believers, we talk about how one day we're going to stand before God and we're going to be accountable for all the things we've done in life, right? We've been told that since we were children. You're going to stand before God and give an account of your life. Right? Accountable for all the things you've done. I think there's another side of that coin. I think we're going to also stand accountable for all the things we did not do. All the chances He gave us to fight, stand up, do what's right, to be righteous. I think we're going to also stand accountable for all the times that we could have and should have done something and didn't. And this is a unique opportunity for us as believers to basically say, look, we're not going to succumb to traditional logic and common sense. We have an opportunity to do what's right. We have an opportunity to stand up and not compromise. And I do see a lot of people in and outside the church that are compromising and saying, look, we're going to go in this direction. Yes, this is not ideal. Yes, this is compromising. Yes, this person is not necessarily, somebody we would normally get behind, but we want to win an election, and so we're going to do this, and it's the lesser of 2 evils. That's not how we should lead from the pulpit. It's not how we should lead as head of households. We should stand firm on what's right at all times, and I think this is a unique opportunity. There are people watching. For pastors, I would say your flock is watching. People are watching what you do. They're looking to you for leadership, and if you compromise now on this, then what is it telling the church body? I think that even in the face of defeat, not that I think that we're facing defeat, but let's just assume we go there for a second. Even in the face of defeat, we should still be applying the biblical principles to what we do. We should still be doing what's right and what's just at all times so that we can show people that we're unwavering and uncompromising in our values and beliefs.
Absolutely.
Because if from the pulpit we teach compromise, then how easy is it for somebody, say a man, to go home and say, well, I'm not going to cheat on my wife, but porn is better than cheating, and so it's the lesser of 2 evils. So I think if I do this, hey, at least I'm not doing that other thing that's way more devastating to my family. And so we start to teach compromise, right? And so I think that pastors have an obligation to uphold what's holy and what's righteous, even in the face of defeat. In fact, I think it would even go farther to even be able to show a congregation, look, logic says this, math says this, traditional theory says this, but we're gonna hold steadfast on truth and be uncompromising and unwavering, and we're just going to allow God to show up and do what He needs to do. We do our part, and we don't question the rest. And I think that's what pastors need to do.
I love it. I love it. So you get elected governor, what would be the 3 things you would want to focus on or think you could accomplish? Would be the biggest 3 things on your list? And considering on a recall election, when there's a short term left in office, you might only be governor for maybe a year and a half or so.
11 months.
Yeah.
before a general election again.
So
Yeah.
what would you what would be the 3 big ticket items you think you focus on?
The 3 big things could not only happen rapidly, they can happen on day one, and it's what I hear up and down the state of California right now. The 3 things I would do on day one. Number 1, lift a state of emergency. As soon as you lift a state of emergency, you take power away from local government to impose unnecessary mask and vaccine mandates, right? So it renders them powerless, and now you put choice back in the hands of people. Second thing you do is you stop any conversation around vaccine passports and verifications, because it's just another form of discrimination and segregation. You stop that. And the third thing you do is you lift the mandates on our healthcare workers, teachers, and students, saying that they have to get the vaccine to go to work or go to school. And again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Just statistically speaking, half the people in my family and half the people at my office have the vaccine. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm pro freedom of choice.
Wait, let me interrupt you. Anyway, all those 3 things you just shared that you do in the first day of office, I think there's one word for it. It's called freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom.
Right?
We're not in a communist state. We're not in a state the government dictates to the people what to do. That's insidious. That's evil. That is evil when the government removes the power of the people.
100%.
I think they need to go back and read our state constitution. We the people of California, the United States Constitution, we the people. You sound like you're we the people.
What's funny is that
and free.
Those 3 things that I mentioned are not necessarily me doing anything. It's undoing things, right? It's undoing what's been done. And it's giving the freedoms back that were never theirs to take. Everyone needs to know in America that the government did not give us our freedoms. Our freedoms are God-given, inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. And America just decided that it was going to be a country that honored those God-given, inalienable rights. They didn't give them to us. They just understood our Creator gave them to us and they should be protected. So the idea that our government has now taken those from us that are not theirs to take, that it's going to take someone to go and give them back to us, it's kind of absurd that on day one, what I'm really going to do is undo some of the things that should have never been done in the first place. So those are really the topics that, and obviously I have a plan for homelessness and energy and water. We talked to our farmers. I was on the phone today and I was in Central Valley last week. I'm going later on this week to talk to our farmers and agricultural families and industry. California is riddled with problems, and as a CEO, that's what you deal with all day long. And I have a plan to address all that, taxes and everything. But right now, this medical freedom topic is one of the greatest attacks on our freedoms in U.S. history, and that is what is really driving the highest level of anxiety across California. Whether it's you're not able to go to work, you're going to get fired, your kid can't go to school, whatever it is, people are absolutely paranoid and they're ready to uproot themselves and leave. And a lot of them don't even have the means to do it, but they just have no other choice. So that's day one.
I love it. What is day 2, day 3, the rest of your 11 months, I guess, is what it is officially.
Yeah. So the 11 months, it's working on tax reform as a business owner. I told you that I was leaving because of our exorbitant taxes. We need to work on that. There's $181 billion that are collected on income tax. I have a way in both monetizing some of what California does and then renegotiating our contracts and killing needless projects to actually get to that number, because my goal would be to eliminate income tax. Like of Florida, my goal would be to obviously lower our sales tax and gas tax. Those taxes were imposed on us because we have somebody in office that doesn't understand how to run a business and needlessly spends on projects that don't benefit us. So I'd work on that. Homelessness is a huge issue. But rather than reinventing the wheel, we're going to work with nonprofits and church-based organizations from San Diego to San Francisco to actually equip them, empower them, fund them, and then give them the infrastructure to scale. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And California right now has a payroll in the couple $100 million a year in payroll, where they've hired people to fix the homeless problem. But if you fire those people, actually apply that money to fixing the problem, many economists say we could actually resolve the problem. So it's a lot of fat. And I've run a lean company for 20 years. I know how to run lean.
Sure.
So that's what we would address. Crime is another issue, right? We have police officers who are not allowed to police. We have a governor who's constantly changing the definition of what a crime is, right? Letting criminals out of our prison systems. We need to be strong on our mayors. We need to hit them where it matters on funding. We need to get them to clean up their cities. We need to, allow our police to be police again and get DAs in there that will actually prosecute crime. And we have water issues too. But when you talk to farmers, it's not a water shortage issue. We have a water management issue. And so we have ways in which within the first week of being there with the stroke of a pen, we can start to give farmers back more of the water they're paying for. Right now, our farmers, by the way, California feeds the nation. And our farmers right now are paying for 100% of their water and they're getting 5% of it. While needlessly, we waste water, pouring it out into the San Francisco Bay, because of lobbyists and because of pollution. And so with the stroke of the pen, we can give our farmers back the water that they so desperately need and that they're paying for. So there are a lot of issues, and we have plans for all of them, but we need to get in. We need to get in. And so we need pastors, the church, to get behind what we're doing, to say, hey, we got a viable David in this fight. We need to let him go in there and do what he's called to do, and restore order to California.
I love it, Governor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Anthony,
you very much.
today,
you.
And our prayers are with you, and hopeful that California will see an incredible, unprecedented change that would bring good into our government, and that would spread across our state and our great nation.
Well, and with that, there's a revival happening.
Yes.
But God doesn't want the revival just to remain in the four walls of the church.
Correct.
The revival needs to spill out into our communities, into our businesses, into our politics. And hopefully this is the beginning of that happening. So we need revival in every aspect of life, starting here.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
God bless you.
God bless you.